Children always recognize the people who loved them first. Rain hammered against the windshield as Ethan Cole tightened both hands around the steering wheel of his black Mercedes SUV. The glow of Manhattan fading behind him mile by mile. The highway was nearly empty at this hour except for long streams of headlights slicing through the storm like ghosts. Beside him, 6-year-old Lily slept curled beneath a cream-colored blanket, one tiny sneaker half hanging off her foot. Ethan glanced at the dashboard clock. 11:47 p.m. Another delayed flight. Another business dinner that ran too long. Another promise to his daughter that he barely managed to keep. The guilt sat quietly inside expensive men like him. Never loud. Never visible. Just heavy. A flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead as Lily stirred softly in her sleep. "Daddy," she whispered. Ethan lowered the radio immediately. "Yeah, sweetheart." Her eyes barely opened. "I'm hungry." He exhaled through a tired smile. 20 minutes later, he pulled into a roadside diner just off Interstate 87. The kind of place wealthy men usually passed without noticing. The neon sign buzzed weakly in the rain. Half Moon Diner. Open all night. Inside, warm yellow light covered everything in a sleepy glow. Old country music played softly near the kitchen. A truck driver drank coffee alone in the corner booth. A waitress wiped down empty tables beneath flickering ceiling lights. Ethan noticed her only for a second at first. Dark skin. Slim figure. Hair tied back neatly beneath a black scarf. Oversized gray sweater beneath her apron. Quiet movements. The kind of woman most people forgot moments after seeing her. But something about her stillness felt different. Controlled. Careful. As if she had spent years teaching herself how not to take up space. Lily slid out of the booth first, rubbing her eyes. The waitress approached carrying 2 menus against her chest. "Evening," she said softly, almost apologetically. Then Lily froze. Completely. Ethan noticed it immediately. His daughter stared at the woman with wide eyes, lips slightly parted, breathing shallow like she had seen a ghost. The waitress noticed too. "You okay, baby?" she asked gently. Lily stood there in silence for 3 long seconds. Then came the word that stopped the entire diner cold. "Manga." The waitress dropped the ceramic coffee mug in her hand. It exploded across the floor. Even the cook behind the counter looked up. Ethan's expression hardened instantly. "Excuse me?" he said sharply. Lily never took her eyes off the woman. "Mama," she whispered again, this time trembling. The waitress looked like all the air had left her body. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter beside her as if she suddenly couldn't stand. Ethan pulled Lily closer protectively. "Sweetheart," he said carefully. "That's not your mother." But Lily frowned in confusion. "Yes, she is." Ethan felt irritation rise in his chest. "Lily. She smells like my lullaby." The diner fell silent again. The waitress covered her mouth instantly. Eyes filling with tears she clearly did not want anyone to see. Ethan stared at her now, really stared for the first time. And then his gaze dropped to the silver chain around her neck. His entire body went still. Hanging beneath the diner lights was a small silver moon charm. Tiny. Worn smooth with age. Identical to the one buried with his late wife 3 years ago. Some memories do not disappear. They simply wait for the right voice to call them back. Ethan could not stop staring at the silver moon charm around the waitress's neck. Rain tapped softly against the diner windows now, slower than before, like the storm itself had paused to listen. Lily sat quietly beside him in the booth, swinging her legs beneath the table, still watching the woman with strange certainty in her eyes. The waitress quickly knelt beside the broken mug pieces scattered across the floor. "I am sorry," she whispered to the cook behind the counter. "I will clean it up." Her hands shook while gathering the ceramic fragments into a towel. Ethan noticed she kept her eyes lowered now, avoiding him completely. But he had already seen enough. The silver moon charm was impossible. His late wife Claire had owned only 2 of them. One remained buried with her in Connecticut. The other had vanished from their home the week after the funeral. Ethan. Remembered because Claire used to wear the necklace every night while rocking Lily to sleep. Sometimes he could still hear the soft metal tapping against the wooden crib rail in the darkness. "Daddy," Lily whispered gently. "Why is Mama sad?" Ethan leaned closer immediately. "Lily, listen to me carefully. That woman is not your mother." But the little girl frowned. "Then why does she look at me like she knows me?" Ethan had no answer for that. Across the diner, the waitress disappeared briefly through the kitchen doors. Ethan stood slowly from the booth. "Stay here," he told Lily. "Do not move." He walked toward the back hallway near the kitchen where the lights dimmed into a softer yellow. The waitress stood alone beside a sink, breathing carefully as if trying not to cry. Up close, she looked younger than he first thought. Early 30s, maybe. Tired eyes, gentle face, a sadness that seemed practiced. Ethan stopped several feet away. "Where did you get that necklace?" he asked quietly. The woman froze. For a moment, only the sound of running water filled the silence between them. Then she slowly touched the silver moon charm against her chest. "It was a gift," she answered softly. "From who?" She hesitated too long. Ethan noticed immediately. Wealthy men learned how to recognize hesitation before they learned trust. "I asked you a question." Finally, she looked at him directly for the first time. Her eyes were dark and calm despite the fear hiding underneath them. "Your wife," she said. Ethan felt his heartbeat stop for half a second. "That is impossible." "Her name was Claire," the waitress continued quietly. "She liked vanilla in her coffee even though she pretended she hated sweet things. She always carried cash because she said tipping jars made people feel seen. And every Thursday night she sang the same lullaby to Lily before bedtime." Ethan stared at her in complete silence. Nobody knew about the lullaby. Not even his own father. Claire used to sing it only after the house staff had gone home. Just her voice in the dark nursery. Just her and Lily. The waitress lowered her eyes again. "You should go back to your daughter." Ethan stepped closer instead. "Who are you?" Before she could answer, Lily suddenly appeared at the hallway entrance, clutching her small blanket tightly. The little girl looked at the waitress with tears gathering in her eyes. Then she asked the question that made the woman nearly break apart where she stood. "If you are not my mama," Lily whispered softly, "then why do I remember your voice?" The truth rarely arrives all at once. Comes quietly, one impossible detail at a time. Naomi stood frozen beside the sink while Lily looked up at her with trembling eyes. The little girl clutched her blanket tighter against her chest, waiting for an answer no child should have known to ask. Naomi swallowed hard before kneeling slowly to Lily's height. "Sweetheart," she whispered gently. "Sometimes our hearts remember people before our minds do." Ethan watched every second carefully. Something inside him wanted to end this conversation immediately. Another part of him could not move at all. Lily stepped closer to Naomi without fear. Children usually hesitated around strangers, especially after midnight in unfamiliar places. But not Lily. She looked calm now, safe, as if standing near Naomi had settled something restless inside her. "You used to sing to me," Lily said softly. Naomi's eyes filled again. Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Lily," he interrupted firmly. "That is enough." But the waitress shook her head slightly. "It is okay." Her voice remained soft, almost fragile. "What song do you remember?" Lily frowned in concentration for a moment. Then quietly, almost under her breath, she hummed 3 notes. Naomi covered her mouth instantly. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Claire used to hum those exact notes while walking Lily through the nursery late at night. Not words, just a melody. Simple, slow, private. Something she made up herself during the first weeks after Lily was born. Ethan had never recorded it, never shared it. The diner suddenly felt too small around him. Naomi looked down at the floor before speaking again. "You should take her home," she whispered. "It is late." Ethan stepped forward immediately. No, the sharpness in his voice surprised even him. Naomi looked up. Carefully, Ethan lowered his tone. "You know something. I need you to explain how." Silence stretched between them. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clinked softly beneath old country music. Outside, rainwater rolled down the diner windows in silver lines beneath the parking lot lights. Naomi slowly stood again. I cannot explain everything tonight. Then explain one thing. Ethan pointed toward the necklace. Why did my wife give you that? Naomi touched the silver moon charm again, this time almost unconsciously. Because she was afraid. Ethan frowned. Afraid of what? Naomi hesitated. Of losing her daughter. Ethan immediately shook his head. Claire loved Lily more than anything. I know, Naomi answered softly. That was never the problem. Ethan stared at her, confused now instead of angry. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar pressing against the perfect order of his life. Doubt. Lily climbed back onto the diner stool beside the counter and rested her chin on folded arms. Daddy? She whispered sleepily. Can we stay a little longer? Ethan opened his mouth to answer, but his phone suddenly vibrated inside his coat pocket. He glanced down at the screen. 23 missed calls from his father. 4 voicemail messages. 1 text. Call me now. It is about the girl at the diner. Ethan slowly lifted his eyes back toward Naomi. She had already seen the message reflected in his expression. And for the first time that night, real fear crossed her face. Not fear for herself. Fear of who might already know he found her. Money can bury secrets for years, but one frightened child can uncover them in a single night. Ethan stared at the message on his phone, while rainwater dripped slowly from the edge of his coat onto the diner floor. Call me now. It is about the girl at the diner. His father never used words carelessly, especially not at midnight. Ethan slowly lifted his eyes toward Naomi again. She stood completely still now beside the sink, both hands gripping the counter edge so tightly her knuckles had turned pale beneath the kitchen lights. She already knew. Somehow, she knew exactly who sent the message. Who are you afraid of? Ethan asked quietly. Naomi looked away first. You should leave before this becomes complicated. Ethan almost laughed at the absurdity of the sentence. Complicated? He repeated softly. My daughter thinks she remembers you. You own my wife's necklace. And now my father somehow knows where you are. Lily climbed down carefully from the stool and walked toward Naomi again. Ethan noticed something strange then. Naomi instinctively opened her arms slightly before stopping herself at the last second. Like her body remembered comforting Lily before her mind allowed it. The small movement hit Ethan harder than he expected. Lily leaned sleepily against Naomi's side anyway. Naomi closed her eyes for one painful second before gently brushing raindamp curls away from the little girl's forehead. The motion looked natural, practiced, familiar. Ethan suddenly remembered all the nights after Lily was born when Claire had been too exhausted to leave bed. The nurses, the caregivers, the blur of medication, hospital visits, endless crying, sleepless mornings. Back then Ethan had buried himself inside work, believing money could solve exhaustion faster than presence ever could. He had missed more than he admitted to himself. Naomi stepped back carefully. She should sleep. Ethan's voice lowered. Tell me how you know my family. Naomi hesitated. Then the old cook behind the counter spoke unexpectedly from across the diner. Because she used to come here every Thursday night. Ethan turned sharply. The old man dried his hands slowly on a towel before continuing. Years ago, young white woman too, pregnant, always looked tired. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. Claire. They sat in booth 6 every week. The cook continued softly. The pregnant woman cried a lot. Your waitress listened. Naomi closed her eyes briefly as if she wished the conversation would stop. But the old man continued anyway. One night the pregnant lady grabbed this girl's hands and said she was scared she would not know how to love her own baby. Ethan stopped breathing for a second. Claire had never told him that. The old cook pointed gently toward Naomi. This one stayed with her until closing almost every week. Silence filled the diner again. Ethan looked at Naomi differently now. Not like a stranger. Not even like a mystery. more like someone standing inside a photograph he had somehow cropped out years ago. His phone vibrated again. Another text from his father appeared across the screen. "Do not let Lily near her again." Ethan slowly read the message twice. Naomi saw his expression darken. "You should listen to him," she whispered. "Why?" Ethan demanded. "Because he knows what really happened after Lily was born." Ethan stepped closer immediately. "Then tell me." Naomi's eyes filled with quiet pain. "Your wife was drowning," she whispered softly, "and nobody around her wanted to admit it." Ethan stared at her in stunned silence while Lily looked between them in confusion. Then Naomi said the sentence that shattered something deep inside him. "There were nights your daughter cried for hours," she whispered, "and I was the one who held her until sunrise." The people who save us quietly are often the easiest to erase. Ethan could not remember driving away from the diner. One moment he was standing beneath yellow kitchen lights staring at Naomi in silence. The next, he was gripping the steering wheel again, while Manhattan slowly reappeared through the wet darkness ahead. Lily slept in the back seat now, curled beneath her blanket with one tiny hand still holding the paper napkin Naomi had folded into the shape of a moon before they left. Ethan kept replaying the same sentence in his head. "I was the one who held her until sunrise." The city skyline blurred behind sheets of rain as memories Ethan had ignored for years slowly began returning in pieces. Claire crying in the nursery at 3 in the morning. Claire locking herself inside the bathroom for almost an hour while Lily screamed in another room. Claire staring silently out apartment windows with empty eyes while expensive specialists promised things would improve soon. Back then, Ethan told himself he was helping by working harder, building more security, more stability, more distance from fear. But now another possibility haunted him. What if somebody else had been carrying the weight he abandoned? Ethan parked beneath the underground lights of his penthouse building shortly after 1 a.m. The doorman approached with an umbrella immediately, but Ethan barely noticed him. His thoughts still sat inside that roadside diner beside a frightened waitress wearing his wife's necklace. Upstairs, the apartment felt painfully quiet. Lily remained asleep against his shoulder as he carried her through the marble hallway toward her bedroom. The moment he laid her down, her small fingers reached weakly for him. "Daddy?" she murmured sleepily. "Yeah, sweetheart." Her eyes stayed closed. "Please do not let her disappear again." Ethan froze completely. Again, the words settled into the room like smoke. He brushed Lily's curls gently from her forehead before pulling the blanket higher around her shoulders. Then he noticed something sticking halfway beneath the edge of her bed. A crayon drawing, folded twice. Ethan slowly picked it up. The paper looked old. Months old, maybe. He unfolded it carefully beneath the bedside lamp. His stomach tightened instantly. The drawing showed Lily standing between two women. One was clearly Claire with blonde hair and a blue dress. The other woman had dark skin and a silver necklace shaped like a moon. Above them, written in crooked child handwriting, were 5 simple words. "Mommy Claire and Night Mama." Ethan sat slowly on the edge of the bed. His pulse echoed loudly inside his ears now. He had never seen this drawing before. Never heard Lily mention a night mama. The bedroom suddenly felt colder. Ethan stood immediately and walked toward the hallway office where family records were stored digitally inside a secured cabinet. He opened file after file from the year Lily was born. Hospital documents, pediatric reports, home care invoices, everything perfectly organized, perfectly controlled. But one detail stopped him cold. 3 months of overnight caregiver records had been deleted completely. Not missing. Deleted. Ethan stared at the blank gap in the timeline while something sharp settled deep inside his chest. Somebody had removed an entire person from his daughter's early life. His phone vibrated softly again on the desk beside him. Another message from his father appeared. "Some women are dangerous because they make children remember the truth." Ethan looked back toward Lily's bedroom down the dark hallway. Then slowly, for the first time in years, he opened the voicemail his late wife had left him the week before she died. Claire's exhausted voice filled the silence softly. "Ethan, If anything ever happens to me, promise me Lily will never forget Naomi. Some families are not broken by hatred. They are broken by silence. Ethan did not sleep that night. He sat alone in the dark office beside the floor-to-ceiling windows while Manhattan slowly turned from black to gray beneath the early morning sky. Claire's voicemail played again through the room. Promise me Lily will never forget Naomi. Each time he heard her exhausted voice, another piece of the past shifted inside him. By sunrise, Ethan had already called his private security team, his assistant, and the hospital where Lily was born 6 years earlier. Every answer came back the same. There were no official records of Naomi Brooks connected to the Cole family. No employment history.
No caregiver registration.
Nothing. It was as if she had never existed at all. But somebody had deleted those records deliberately. Ethan knew the difference between missing information and erased information. Wealthy families specialized in the second kind. Around 7:30 a.m., Lily padded quietly into the kitchen wearing yellow pajamas and carrying her stuffed rabbit beneath one arm. Her eyes still looked sleepy. "Daddy." Ethan immediately closed the laptop on the counter. "Morning, sweetheart." Lily climbed onto a stool beside him. "Are we going back to the diner today?" Ethan poured orange juice slowly into a glass before answering. "Why do you want to see her again?" Lily looked confused by the question. "Because she looks lonely." The simplicity of the answer hurt more than Ethan expected. Children never complicated kindness. Lily sipped her juice quietly for a moment before speaking again. "When I was little, somebody used to rub my back when I had bad dreams." Ethan felt stillness settle over him. "Your mother did that sometimes." Lily shook her head gently.
No.
"Different. Hands." Ethan looked away toward the windows. For years he had convinced himself grief distorted memory. That Lily's attachment to bedtime songs and old scents and forgotten lullabies came from losing Claire too young. But now another truth sat in front of him. Maybe his daughter remembered someone everyone else had been instructed to forget. His phone buzzed against the marble counter. His father's office. Ethan answered immediately. "You need to stop this now," his father said without greeting. His voice sounded calm in the dangerous way powerful men perfected over decades. "Who is Naomi Brooks?" Ethan asked quietly. Silence answered first. Then came a slow exhale. "A mistake." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Claire left me a voicemail asking me not to let Lily forget her." Another silence. Longer this time. Finally his father spoke again. "Your wife became emotionally unstable after the birth." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. "Do not say it like that. I am saying it accurately." His father's tone remained cold. "That woman inserted herself into your household during a vulnerable period." Ethan stared at the skyline while anger slowly rose inside him. Inserted herself? Claire grew attached to her. "And Lily?" Ethan asked sharply. "Did Lily grow attached too?" His father ignored the question. "You have responsibilities now, Ethan. Investors, board members, political partnerships. Do not drag old scandals back into the public eye because a diner waitress wears a necklace." The line went quiet for one dangerous second. Then Ethan asked the question he had been avoiding since midnight. "What did you do to her?" His father answered immediately this time. "I paid her to leave." Ethan felt something inside him crack softly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough to change the shape of how he saw his own family forever. "Why?" he whispered. His father's answer came colder than the rain from the night before. "Because your daughter cried harder whenever she left the room." Children do not measure love by blood. They measure it by who stayed when they were afraid. Ethan returned to the diner the next evening just before sunset. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened beneath the fading orange light like the city had not fully dried from the storm. Lily sat quietly in the passenger seat clutching the old moon-shaped napkin Naomi folded for her the night before. "Do not get your hopes up," Ethan said softly while parking beside the curb. "She might not be here." But Lily smiled faintly toward the diner windows. "She is." Ethan looked over. "How do you know?" Lily shrugged gently. "I just do. Inside, the diner smelled like coffee and warm bread. Country music drifted softly from an old radio near the kitchen. Naomi stood near the counter refilling sugar containers one by one with slow, careful movements. When she looked up and saw them, she froze completely. Ethan noticed exhaustion beneath her eyes this time. Not from work, from fear. Lily immediately ran toward her before Ethan could react. Naomi instinctively bent down and caught the little girl carefully in her arms. The movement happened too naturally to fake. Ethan stood motionless beside the entrance, watching Lily wrap both arms tightly around Naomi's neck, as if returning somewhere familiar after years away. Naomi closed her eyes briefly while holding her. Not possessive, not inappropriate, just protective in the quietest way possible. "You came back," Lily whispered happily. Naomi smiled through visible emotion. "Looks like I did." Ethan slowly approached them. "We need to talk." Naomi gently set Lily back down beside the booth. "Sweetheart, can you color for a minute?" Lily nodded and slid into the booth with crayons from the counter. Naomi faced Ethan near the coffee machines where steam rose softly into the warm diner lights. "I told you already," she said quietly. "Your father paid me to disappear." Ethan kept his voice calm. "Why would Claire let that happen?" Naomi looked down at the floor tiles. "Because she was tired." Ethan waited. Naomi finally continued. "After Lily was born, Claire stopped sleeping. Some nights she barely spoke. Some mornings she could not even hold a coffee cup steady." Ethan remembered those mornings now. He remembered choosing conference calls over conversations because dealing with fear felt harder than managing companies. Naomi's voice remained soft. "Your wife thought something was wrong with her because motherhood did not feel magical." Ethan looked away. Naomi glanced toward Lily coloring quietly inside the booth. But Lily always calmed down when somebody held her against their chest and hummed. Ethan swallowed hard. "You." Naomi nodded once. "Claire used to call me when the baby would not stop crying." Ethan stared at her silently. "How long were you in our home?" Naomi hesitated. "Almost 4 months. For months." Ethan felt the number hit him like a physical weight. For months of his daughter's life erased from memory. For months another person had quietly carried his family, while he buried himself inside work and grief and avoidance. Lily suddenly held up a crayon drawing proudly from the booth. "Look!" Ethan walked closer automatically. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands beneath a yellow moon. One little girl in the middle. One blonde woman on the left. One dark-skinned woman on the right. Above them Lily had written carefully in large, uneven letters. "The moms who sang to me." Ethan looked at the page for a long moment before speaking. "Lily," he asked gently, "why did you draw Naomi next to your mother?" Lily answered without hesitation. "Because Mommy Claire stopped smiling sometimes." The diner fell silent again. Then the little girl added the sentence that made Naomi quietly begin to cry beside the counter. "But Naomi always stayed until the scary nights were over." Sometimes the person who saves a family is the one history tries hardest to erase. The diner had grown quiet by the time the last customers left. Outside, the wet pavement reflected the glow of streetlights in long golden streaks. Lily had fallen asleep curled against the booth beside the window, her crayons scattered near her small hands. Naomi carefully draped her gray sweater over the little girl without waking her. Ethan watched the gesture silently from across the diner. Every movement Naomi made around Lily carried the same quiet instinct, the same familiarity. It no longer looked accidental. Naomi sat slowly across from Ethan at the booth while the old cook cleaned dishes in the back kitchen. For the first time since the stormy night they met again. Neither of them spoke immediately. The silence between them no longer felt hostile, just heavy with things that should have been said years ago. Ethan finally looked up. "Why did Claire leave that voicemail?" Naomi folded her hands carefully together on the table. "Because she knew she was getting worse." Ethan's jaw tightened. Naomi continued softly. "Your wife was not weak, Ethan. She was overwhelmed and terrified. But everyone around her kept telling her she should feel grateful instead of exhausted." Ethan lowered his eyes. Naomi stared quietly at the sleeping child beside the window. There were nights Claire sat on the nursery floor crying because Lily would not stop screaming. She thought she was failing as a mother. Ethan remembered those nights now with painful clarity. The endless business trips, the meetings, the excuses. He had mistaken providing money for providing presents. Naomi's voice grew softer. One night Claire handed Lily to me and whispered something I never forgot. Ethan looked back at her. What did she say? Naomi swallowed carefully before answering. She said, "Please love her until I can feel like myself again." Ethan closed his eyes briefly. A deep ache settled inside his chest. "And did you?" Naomi looked genuinely confused by the question. "Of course I did." The answer came so naturally it almost broke him. Ethan stared toward Lily sleeping peacefully beneath Naomi's sweater. His daughter had not looked that calm in weeks. "Why did you leave?" he asked quietly. Naomi touched the moon necklace again, a habit Ethan now realized she did whenever painful memories surfaced. "Your father came to see me after Claire died." Ethan's expression hardened immediately. "What did he say?" Naomi gave a faint, sad smile. "That people like me were not supposed to become permanent parts of families like yours." Ethan looked away in shame. Naomi continued gently. "He offered me enough money to disappear quietly and never contact Lily again." "And you accepted?" Naomi nodded once. "Because I thought it would protect her." Ethan frowned. "Protect her from what?" Naomi hesitated for several seconds. Then she reached slowly into her worn canvas bag beneath the booth. She pulled out a folded hospital document, yellowed slightly with age. Ethan unfolded it carefully beneath the diner lights. His pulse slowed instantly. The paper carried Claire's signature near the bottom. Beside it, another signature. Naomi Brooks. Emergency Temporary Guardian Authorization. Ethan looked up sharply. Naomi's eyes glistened with quiet emotion. "Your wife signed temporary guardianship to me the night she was hospitalized after her breakdown." Ethan could barely breathe now. "Claire trusted you with Lily?" Naomi nodded softly. "For almost 6 weeks." Ethan stared down at the document again while years of missing pieces slowly locked together inside his mind. Then Naomi whispered the sentence Claire had apparently carried alone until the end of her life. "She told me if anything ever happened to her, Lily would still need someone who remembered how to calm the dark. Home is not always the place where a child is born. Sometimes it is simply the place where somebody stayed." 3 weeks later, the first snow of December drifted quietly across Manhattan. Ethan stood alone beside the kitchen windows of his penthouse apartment while the city glowed silver beneath the evening sky. For years this home had felt expensive, impressive, controlled, but never warm. Tonight was different. Soft laughter echoed faintly down the hallway. Lily sat cross-legged on the living room rug surrounded by crayons, blankets, and paper snowflakes while Naomi helped her tape decorations carefully against the windows. The little girl had not stopped smiling since Naomi returned to their lives. Ethan noticed it in small things first. Lily slept through the night now. She no longer hid beneath tables during thunderstorms. She laughed more easily. She hummed while brushing her teeth. Tiny changes. Quiet miracles. Naomi still worked part-time at the diner during weekends even after Ethan offered to help financially. "I do not need rescuing," she told him gently one morning over coffee. Ethan respected her more after that. She never asked for money, never demanded explanations, never tried to replace Claire. Instead, she simply existed inside their lives with the same quiet steadiness she once gave a frightened newborn at 3 in the morning. One snowy evening, Lily climbed into Ethan's lap holding an old photo album Naomi had brought over earlier that afternoon. "Daddy," she whispered softly. "Look." Ethan opened the album slowly. Inside were dozens of faded photographs from Lily's first months alive. Claire smiling weakly from a hospital bed while Naomi held baby blankets nearby. Tiny newborn socks drying beside bottles in the kitchen. One photo stopped Ethan completely. Claire sat asleep in a rocking chair with Lily against her chest while Naomi rested nearby on the nursery floor, still wearing hospital scrubs. exhausted, barely awake herself, but present. Ethan stared at the photograph for a long time. "Your mommy took that picture," Naomi said quietly from across the room. Ethan looked up. Naomi stood near the doorway holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. Snowlight reflected softly against the silver moon necklace around her neck. "Claire said she finally felt safe enough to sleep that night," Naomi whispered. Ethan lowered his eyes back to the photo. For years he had believed love looked loud, grand, powerful. But the deepest love in his daughter's life had arrived quietly. In overnight lullabies, in warm bottles at sunrise, in exhausted arms that stayed when nobody was watching. Lily suddenly pointed toward the dining table behind them. 3 mugs sat waiting there beside a plate of cookies. 1 large mug for Ethan, 1 small mug for Lily, and 1 with tiny painted moons along the rim for Naomi. "I made her a spot," Lily said proudly. Ethan looked at the table silently, then toward Naomi. She looked uncertain suddenly, like somebody standing near a doorway unsure if she truly belonged inside. Ethan stood slowly and pulled out the chair beside Lily's. "You should sit before the chocolate gets cold," he said softly. Naomi's eyes filled with emotion she tried hard not to show. She sat carefully beside Lily while snow continued falling outside the windows in complete silence. For a while nobody spoke. They simply sat together beneath warm apartment lights while the city moved far below them. Then Lily reached for Naomi's hand beneath the table and whispered the words that finally healed something broken in all 3 of them. "See," she said sleepily. "I told you she would come home."